on the highway for hours.
Been sitting in traffic now for 5 hours.
Oh, man. Holy hell.
And left a truck in pieces after it was stuck on train tracks. Also, meet the unofficial father of atmospheric rivers.
And it became obvious at that point to me that this was a super important phenomenon.
And why efforts to eliminate mosquitoes have failed.
Well, it's not for a lack of trying.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Snow is still falling in many places around the Great Lakes this morning, and it could continue through much of the day. This is on top of the feet of snow that already blankets countless communities. 4 to 5 feet is common, especially in rural New York State, east of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. The heavy snow caused a New York barn to collapse, killing 5 cows and trapping 100 others. Emergency crews worked late into the night to rescue those animals. Officials urged farmers to check their roofs and to clear them of snow where possible.
Nope, he's not going to stop. Oh, man. Oh, man. Holy hell. Wow.
And in Erie, Pennsylvania, a train slammed into a truck that was stuck in the snow and right on the tracks. The driver was able to get out in time and was not injured. 3 to 4 feet have fallen here since Thanksgiving, and another 6 to 12 inches could fall today. And those who did not get stuck on the roads faced extreme driving conditions. Visibility was difficult as the blowing snow covered highways. We have 2 reports on how the snow impacted roads and lives yesterday. We start in northern Michigan, where hazardous driving conditions led to a major crash.
Monday afternoon, Michigan State Police confirmed a 17-car pileup on I-94. Newly released footage from MSP shows the aftermath of when 14 cars and 3 semi-trucks collided as a result of icy roads and, quote, driving too fast for conditions. These pictures of the scene were provided by News Channel 3 viewers. You can see in this string of photos one of the semi-trucks and 4 cars. I spoke with John Wilson and Julie Peachy at a gas station near County Road 687. They were both traveling on I-94 and both stuck in their cars between 3.5 and 5 hours due to the traffic, and finally able to gas up and try to make their way home.
Until I got stuck in the backed up traffic, and then right out of Kalamazoo, everything came to a screeching halt.
Actually, I was not prepared because no food. I had, liquids in the car, as far as water and tea, but nothing to eat. It's just the fact of not knowing when you're going to get where you got to go.
Officials say that one person was critically injured in the crash.
More than 5 feet of snow pummeled Barnes Corners over the weekend, creating snow mounds higher than mailboxes and trees drooping over power lines. After the snowfall, the only thing left to do is clear the way. Chanel Holder chose a shovel to dig around and underneath her car. She won't let lake effect snow stop her from being a mom.
Yeah, my daughter has a doctor's appointment in Lowville today.
Down the road, a 6-year-old snowblower helping Shane and Maria Learned clear the way at home. It got the job done. Shane admits the elements were a worthy opponent.
Getting this much all at once, it's been the hardest part, because when the plow goes by, the stuff at the end of the road is all hard packed and heavy, and that's where we had the most trouble.
Instead of 2 wheels, 4. Brad Barber and his John Deere tractor prepare his rental cabin, expecting an influx of snowmobilers in the area soon. He knows North Country weather can be harsh and helps those around him.
I've been helping one neighbor out down the street. And my neighbors up the street, they got bogged down, so I went up and I plowed them out.
No. And winter weather alerts continue today from New York to Michigan. Those include lake effect snow warnings, winter storm warnings, and winter weather advisories. Now, these alerts cover snow that's expected to fall today, tomorrow, and into late Thursday night. Now, we will continue to track all that weather for you every day right here on the National Weather Desk. So why do Lake Erie and Lake Ontario produce such prolific lake effect snow events? Meteorologist Ed Russo says there are 3 reasons.
And there's 3 reasons why. So reason number one, and really this is actually the biggest reason. The reason is fetch. So what's fetch? Fetch is basically the wind, the distance that wind travels over water. And in this part of the world, the prevailing wind is west to east. It's out of the west. So Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, their long axis is from west to east. So you have more wind traveling over a longer distance. So Lake Erie is 241 miles long from west to east. And Lake Ontario is 193 miles long. So the more fetch you have, the more organized and intense the snow band that develops, especially when you get that cold wind flowing over much warmer lake waters. Okay, reason number two. Lake Ontario and especially Lake Erie are the most southeastern of the 5 Great Lakes. And they often run milder, especially Lake Erie. Lake Erie is extremely shallow, so during the summer months, the summer heat warms up the lake pretty quick. So during the fall, when you get these really cold air masses moving over the Great Lakes, since Lake Erie is the warmest, you get the biggest difference in air temperature and water temperature. And that difference in temperature is what generates increased instability. And the more instability you have, the stronger the lake effect snowband. So reason number 3. Just to the south of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and to the east of Lake Ontario, you have very, very high terrain. So as those lake effect bands hit that high terrain, it causes the air to rise even more, which causes increased snowfall amounts.
So what does all this snow mean for ice cover on the Great Lakes? Officials are warning people who are thinking of getting out on the lake. Ice is not as thick as you may think it is. Meteorologist Audrey Lee has more.
The smaller lakes already have a coating of ice on them. The bigger bodies of water are cooling down quick, so this is the earliest we've seen cold weather in the last 3 years.
While ice may be forming, nothing is completely iced over yet.
You're getting a lot of warmth from ground that's still coming out. Ice might be 4 inches here and 1 inch here.
While an early ice season is exciting, the worst mistake you can make is being too confident.
Well, they're eager to get on, and that's the worst thing you can do, because if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know the body of water, it could be really dangerous.
Remember, no ice is ever 100% safe.
Make sure that you have people with you. You're not going out there alone.
If you decide to venture out on your own, make sure to let family and friends know where you're going and wear a life jacket.
My recommendation, you should always have a pair of spikes on you. If you do fall through, it gives you can pull yourself back on the ice with these.
If you see someone fall through the ice, call 911. If you go and help them, make sure you don't fall through yourself.
Use a throw rope to actually throw something to that person instead of just running out there. If you do have to go out, lay yourself out on the ground. If you're helping someone on the ice, you're going to disperse your weight out more.
Well, not everyone is dealing with snow, but that doesn't mean they are not feeling the cold. One factor that can make cold temperatures feel worse is wind chill. Meteorologist David Glenn explains.
You know, our bodies lose heat through convection. As temperatures start to cool at night, if you have a light layer on, pretty much you can stay fairly comfortable if there's no wind. So, for example, with a temperature of 40 degrees and no wind, we lose heat a little bit less. A jacket, a vest can keep you pretty warm. So 40 degrees would feel like 40 degrees. However, you had a 20-mile-an-hour wind and gusty at times, well, we start losing that heat a little bit faster. It's stripped away from us. You need to add more layers, or you find yourself holding on tight to trap in that body heat. So a temperature of 40 with a wind of 20 miles an hour produces a wind chill of 29. Now again, these numbers, like 29 for the wind chill, is only how it feels the human skin. It does not affect, like, say, freezing water. But again, it is a value that gives you an idea how wind can chill you a lot faster if there's no wind. So again, as you go through the season, especially this cold air moves in, layer up, be prepared for the wind, and again, get ready for some of those colder wind chill readings in the forecast.
This is Mount Rainier in Washington State. Time-lapse shows the beauty of the mountain, but also changes in the upper atmosphere with wind and water vapor. Chilly mornings with fog have been the norm for some time in western Washington, but really they're just a gorgeous shot. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll take a deep dive into atmospheric rivers and give you a better understanding of this weather phenomenon. Plus, also, we'll look at how climate change is leading to a growing number of mosquitoes.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. A pretty cool air mass is settling into the Northeast this week. Many of you will top out in the 30s to near 40 degrees. We'll see a lot of sun during the morning and notice some clouds mixing in during the afternoon. That's 2:30 this afternoon. That lake effect snow continues up Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Now, our next weather maker in the Northeast will be a weak Alberta clipper, and that arrives Wednesday night to Thursday morning. Notice a round of snow and some rain for some areas. That could be a slippery Thursday morning commute.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the mid-Atlantic region. We're staying dry for the next couple of days. We only could see any light snow showers far to the western portions of the Appalachia region. The rest of the area is looking completely dry. Lots of sunshine to come until we get into Wednesday with a few clouds starting to move in. Staying cold, too. Temperatures are only going to max out in the 40s, even in the lowlands, 20s to low 30s in the upper altitudes. We're going to have some very chilly nights and then some cool days through Wednesday.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. Afternoon high temperatures today still below average for this time of year. We have the 40s in the northern part of the southeast, the 50s along the Gulf Coast, and then we have the 60s and lower 70s once you head down into South Florida. High pressure takes over the forecast, eroding any of that cloud cover left in the Carolinas and the northern part of our area. Dry skies remain in the forecast through about the end of the week when the next isolated shower chance builds into the forecast.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Northern Michigan got its share of lake effect snow over a 4-day period, more than 3 feet in some spots. Meanwhile, in Wisconsin, the cold snap trapped some fall leftovers and ice. This tree clutching its fall foliage while most surrounding ones have relinquished their leaves, and a dusting of snow and peak reflection in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia.
Listen to Off the Radar, new episodes every Tuesday. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
We have 2 segments this morning on atmospheric rivers. That's the weather phenomenon that brings large amounts of rain to the West Coast. First, let's check out an Instagram post from meteorologist Joy Bettenhausen with more information about atmospheric rivers.
You have this long stream of moisture, or water vapor, and when it passes over a mountain range, the water vapor condenses, cools, and you get a lot of rain and snow. Now, it's not always dangerous when you have these systems occurring, but we know these can lead to mudslides, these can lead to feet of snow, feet of rain, and can cause some damage. Now, an interesting fact is that half of the yearly water supply for essentially the west coast of the United States actually comes from only a few atmospheric river events. So they can go through months of drought and then have a strong atmospheric river and make up for that.
Well, you didn't hear the term atmospheric river much until the start of the 21st century. Now there's significant attention on them, not just from broadcast meteorologists, but especially among researchers. Emily Gracie spoke with the meteorologist who is the unofficial father of atmospheric rivers to learn more about how they are classified and studied.
It's remarkably what the word suggests. It's literally a river in the sky, but it's a river of water vapor pushed along by the wind, unlike a terrestrial river, which is liquid, moved by gravity. And it's much larger than a terrestrial river in terms of its spatial extent because, water vapor is much less dense than liquid. So an average AR is about 500 miles across and 1,000 miles long.
Where do they typically occur?
We have learned the most about them on the U.S. West Coast, but they're a phenomena that spans the globe.
The term atmospheric river, has that been around for a long time, or is it just gaining momentum now?
It emerged in the early 90s in a series of 4 or 5 papers that were published in formal journals. But it wasn't until 2003 that I noticed the AR paper that the light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, that's exactly what we're studying. And it became obvious at that point to me that this was a super important phenomenon and that we could then formulate studies and data collection and modeling to better understand them. It was super obvious from the very beginning that they were the real rainmakers on the West Coast.
Does El Nino or La Nina impact atmospheric rivers?
Interestingly, that's been a very common perception, but it's remarkable that we really haven't been able to show that. In the last 20 years, there have been, say, 4 El Ninos and 4 La Ninas. The La Ninas have been unusually wet in Southern California, which is usually, when we expect dry. And the El Ninos have been sort of ho-hum or even a bit on the dry side. And when you look back at the count of ARs that hit Southern California, that basically explains the difference.
Are you ever going to start naming them?
That's come up many times, but there are too many ARs each year. If you add up the entire West Coast, there might be 50 of them in one year. So it's a little bit, I think, logistically not feasible to names, and it would get super confusing.
And if you want to learn more about atmospheric rivers, listen to this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. You'll also hear all about the scale that Marty and his team developed to rank them and the brand new update to that scale that he actually shared with our Emily on the podcast. Find out Off the Radar anywhere you get your podcasts. And today is the second day of meteorological winter. Folks living in places that experience winter cold could see 4 different types of precipitation during the season. Meteorologist Emily Santom has more.
Rain, freezing rain, sleet, and snow. Those are the 4 types that we're working with. A little bit of background, water droplets form in clouds, and when they become too heavy for the clouds to retain, they're released into the atmosphere. Now, they all begin by facing cold air as air cools when it rises. Let's start off with rain. Rain actually meets warmer air that's around 32 degrees or more and melts in the water droplets. So it first starts with the cold air, then the warm air. Now, the next 2 are pretty similar, freezing rain and sleet. That's because they both start off with the cold air, go through warm air, and then eventually hit the cold air at the bottom. Beginning with freezing rain, it'll go through the cold air, then goes to the warm air for a pretty long time. And then by the time it hits the surface, it actually freezes on contact. Now, sleet a little bit different, still goes through the warm air after first touching the cold air, but it's in the cold air the second time more lengthier. So think of Dippin' Dots falling from the sky. The last one is snow, which those water droplets stay in the cold air for the entirety of the entire time. Here's a broader look at all the 4 types. Once again, rain, freezing rain, sleet, and snow. I will say as we get to the colder months, though, freezing rain and sleet are the most dangerous. That's because they actually lead to black ice. A couple of our key points when we start seeing black ice over the next couple of months. Make sure you're steering in your desired direction. Don't put your foot on the brake, and also just take your foot off the accelerator to slow down in general.
Well, this week we're taking a closer look at the connection between climate change and the growing number of mosquitoes. Today, South Carolina meteorologist Jenna Warner shows us some of the dangers this poses and why efforts to eliminate mosquitoes have failed.
With more mosquito days and more activity, other concerns become evident.
A handful of the mosquito species that bite humans are known vectors of pathogens. In the United States, that's predominantly viral pathogens. Most people have heard of things like West Nile virus. Increasingly, we're seeing emergence of things like dengue virus at the southern limit of the United States, where there aren't really strong winter conditions limiting specific species of mosquitoes.
These disease worries are becoming more and more common in urban areas, which means more of a chance for a viral human outbreak. Your next question may be, why not eliminate mosquitoes altogether? Well, it's not for a lack of trying.
We have tried since human history was recorded to get rid of even the few species that we know are problematic and never been successful. But we do know that blanket pesticides and adulticides often kill a lot of the things that eat mosquitoes or compete with mosquitoes. Some of the ones that don't bite humans compete with the problem vectors during those juvenile phases. And one of the reasons we have species that are doing so well in cities right now is because they've been able to establish in habitats where there's no competition and no predation.
Dr. Ledoux says the best way to protect yourself from mosquitoes is by managing water and standing water in your yard. However, since mosquitoes can fly, it only takes one neighbor not managing water ponding objects to cause an influx of mosquitoes in your neighborhood.
And as we go to break, views of the Seattle waterfront.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Phil Kelly. Temperature is going to be our big story, kind of roller coaster here over the next few days. Temps into the low 30s to mid 40s back into the Central Plains. Cold front's going to approach as we go through the region on Wednesday. It's going to kick the winds up, push temperatures into the 40s and mid 50s. Back behind that on Thursday. Look at that. Highs back into the 20s.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. Downright chilly all the way up there from Oklahoma to Little Rock, back over to Amarillo into the 20s and 30s, even down to Dallas. Warmer down to the south, 50s all the way down into Brownsville, 72 degrees. A little bit of a low pressure center slides up, brings opportunities for light rain, mainly to South Texas. Clouds move back on up into the Dallas area. Temperatures will warm up, but they'll be near seasonal levels. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Well, hi there, everybody, and a good Tuesday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, we have fairly quiet weather, frankly. It's nice and bright around the coastal communities. We'll see temps back into the upper 60s around LA and San Diego today. Notice the sunshine, but the chilly temps in the interior of the Pacific Northwest. That's courtesy of this big ridge of high pressure. That weather maker makes for some sunshine up above, but a lot of thick fog and low visibility down below. And that's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Well, you've heard the old adage about red skies at night and the morn, but how much of it is actually true? Meteorologist Christina Ernie has that answer.
Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky in morning, sailors take warning. It's an old mariner's tale, but how much of it is scientifically accurate? Well, actually a lot of it, and here's why. When there's a lot of moisture present in the atmosphere, like right before a rainstorm or any kind of storm that's moving in, it's harder for wavelengths or light to pass through because they reflect off of those moisture particles. And some colors or wavelengths on the spectrum have a harder time passing through, like the longer wavelengths, which are typically red. So at sunrise, right before a storm, there's a lot of moisture present in the atmosphere, and the reds become a lot more prominent because they're having a harder time passing through that layer. And essentially the blue light that would typically give us beautiful blue skies when it's a nice day are able to scatter a whole lot easier, clearing the way to give our skies the oranges, the yellows, the reds, and the pinks that we see.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great Tuesday, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.